Welcome to the Elevate Podcast, your resource for all things business, brand, and leadership. We are excited you have decided to join us today.
Welcome to Elevate 2024. I'm Robert Kaelin, here with my friend
Mike Newman. Good to be here. Happy New Year to everybody as we start out the 2024 year. Robert, we closed out in 2023 about, what episode was that? We were talking about planning for preparing for 2024.
Yeah, so that was episode number 48 back in December 13th. So before we probably get into our conversation today, it would be really helpful if you didn't listen to that episode, or even if you did, go back and listen to it again, because there's some great stuff that'll help kind of lead this conversation today, where we're talking about what is your plan? What is your plan in 2024?
And we talked about in the previous session about the goals and about 5 questions to respond to and asking that. Now I think what we need to do is as we had talked when we finished that one up, was about, well, what are the tools people need to have? And so there's some great tools that are out there. I grew up in my leadership career with a Franklin Planner. It was a paper process that worked extremely well. It's still around today. It's merged with the Covey Company now, and I think it's called Covey Franklin Planner or Franklin Covey Planner, something like that. But the idea of it is that you have your schedule through the day. You have all of the things that you need to accomplish. You're figuring out how to mold those in. And one of the things I liked about it is it had kind of a summary thing of the action that you did on the side. Other people have written some great ways to do it. I know Michael Hyatt has his system, and Robert, I think you use that one, don't you?
I do. Yeah, I got my full focus planner right here.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about the full focus planner and the tools that you have there, and kind of how to break that down.
Yeah. So the full focus planner is really setting out your goals, like your yearly goals, and then breaking them down into quarterly goals, then breaking them down further into monthly goals, weekly goals, and then daily actionable items that you're taking to be able to move those goals further down the road. And so, it's just been a great tool for me. When I started out, I had always been afraid of starting with a planner or something like that, some type of system, because I'm not the most detailed person. And so I would, forget it for a week, I'd leave it in my car, or whatever. And I had to tell myself, you know what, it's okay to not do this every day, but it's not okay to not do it at all.
Right.
And so that's how I started. You guys, I want to encourage you, if you don't have a system right now, find a system that works for you, whether it's the full focus, whether it's the Franklin Planner, or some other system, and just do it as much as you can. Start there.
There's a famous quote that says, failing to plan is planning to fail.
Yeah.
And so whether you're a person who is very detail oriented and you've got your to-do list and every day you crank it out and you track that and that method works for you, sometimes we can get so bogged down in the to-dos of every day that we lose the big picture. And I could be one of those guys, because I'll just open up my, I don't have a formal planner anymore. I used to really love the Franklin Planner thing. Now I just, because we're able to see this, I just track things inside of my book, and you could see 2 different colors of pen. I write out in one the thing that I'm doing, and in red I write out what I accomplished related to that. And again, I do that almost every morning. I sit down and write those things out. I am a big believer in the 80-20 rule, that if we focus 80% of our effort on 20% of the tasks, that we're going to get almost everything accomplished during the day. And so the page I just happened to open up to, one day I have 10 tasks, another day I have 11, another day I have 7. I accomplished 8 of 10 one day. I accomplished 10 of 11 another day. I accomplished 5 out of 7 another day. Okay,
Hmm.
so there are things that get in your way when you're working on the plan, but don't let that get in your way uh,
Yeah.
to keep you from planning. So we talked about the Franklin Planner a little bit. We talked about the full focus planner. The idea is that too bad I don't have this graphic, but I'll see if this works because yeah, it does. So this comes from Michael Hyatt's book called The Vision Driven Leader. And you can see down at the bottom there that it's about how we focus on things to get things done through the vision. And so that first block that is there is what's the annual plan that Robert was talking about. We
Hmm.
got an annual plan that we want to, increase sales by X amount. Yeah, that's great. And as we talked about in our episode earlier, what are you doing with that? How are you breaking
Yeah.
it down? So in this full focus planner, it gives you that. There's another system that's kind of adopted by that. It's called Traction from Gino Wickman, the
Hmm.
Entrepreneur's Operating System. If you haven't picked this up, it's a great book. It's not something you're going to read cover to cover because it's a systems book. It will help you create systems if you're
Yep.
a person that struggles with that. But he uses the language
Hmm.
of rocks. What are the rocks you need to move to get to where you want to go? And so, what are your quarterly
Yeah.
rocks? Identifying those and who is responsible for them. Because ultimately, you as a business owner, you as a leader may be responsible ultimately, but somebody else probably has primary responsibility for getting that work done. And so figuring out who the responsible people are is another big thing with this. And a piece that he opened my eyes up to when I read it, it was I have all these things, but I'm not really responsible for that
Yeah.
directly. Somebody else is. And
The thing
then
I love about that, the thing I love about that concept, I don't know if you've seen this video, but there's a video of a professor teaching a class, and he comes up and he's got a jar, and it's an empty jar, and then he's got these other jars next to it. One of them has a big pile, like a pile of big rocks in it. Another one's got small pebbles. Another one's got sand, and one's got water. And you're thinking to yourself, like, there's no way all of this is going to fit into this jar. But the way that he goes through it, he says, look, if you put the big rocks in first, then the small rocks, then the sand, then the water, everything fits. But when you do it out of order, it won't fit. It'll overflow and you'll have a mess on your hands. And so that illustration of the big rocks being those main priorities that need to go in the jar first, I love that it works personally, but I also love that it works in business.
yeah,
It's just a principle that is true, that works. And so learning how to prioritize our lives is very important in order to plan.
and Gino Trackman's system of the
Gino Wickman traction.
there we go. I think I was saying it all wrong. Trackman.
Yes. I think that
Wickman
was
with
the second
traction.
cousin to the Walkman,
Yes,
right? You
yes. The walk.
put it in your ears and
Uh, so, so having the idea, you can't have a whole bunch of rocks either, like Robert was just talking about. You know, each one of your direct reports, if you have multiple people that are reporting to you, you should only have 3 or 4 that they're trying to move that particular quarter. If you
mm-hmm.
have 20 rocks you're trying to move, you're not going to probably move many of them very far. But if you have 3 or
Yeah.
4, you're able to leverage those. So you might have 20 rocks for the year, but you break them down into the quarter, they become manageable. And then figuring out what's my
Yeah.
monthly plan in 3 months period of time, what's my monthly plan that I need to do? And so Hyatt calls it the strategies that you're going to take. Okay, and he actually moves from a quarter down to a week. Um, Wickman moves
Mm-hmm.
from a quarter down to a month because I think it gives you the ability to chunk things down even further. But when you take those steps and you say, what are going to be the pieces that I need to do this month? And then who is responsible? What's the delegation? And then moving that into the weekly aspect of things. What needs to be accomplished this week to make the progress that we
Mm-hmm.
want to this month? And then going to the daily tasks or the daily to-dos. What am I going to do today to move that rock further this week, so that by the time the month comes, we're at where we want to be? And so if you're interested in it, email us with the traction thing. I have a piece we'll send to you that I created to help some of my clients work through these things, and we'll be happy to send that to you that's adopted from the traction idea. Because if you just think about it and you don't write it down, you're likely not going to achieve it in the time period that you want. When you
Yeah.
become, as we talked about in a previous episode, with the smarter planning tool that again is available, if you send it to it or tell us that you want it, we'll send it to you. These tools are tools for your tool belt, tools that you can have to help you move further, faster in what you're doing. And
Yeah.
I believe that, as you saw from my illustration earlier, I believe your daily to-dos are going to help you significantly. And having that 80-20, I have as a goal written down most days to walk. I write it down because I found out when I didn't write it down that I didn't go do my exercise for the day. But now I write it
Yep.
down nearly every day. And the days it's written down, I get it done. And the days that I don't write it down, I make up some flimsy excuse like it's raining outside, so I can't go, or there's just not enough time between now and the next thing for me to squeeze that in. But when I write it down, because of my personality style of getting things done, I'm going to try my best to get it done.
So I love that you said that, because it brings up a couple of thoughts in my mind. Number one is we have to get really good at leading ourselves well. We know that we are the king and queen of excuses when it comes to being able to justify things in our lives, and when we recognize that we need to lead ourselves really well, because everything rises and falls on leadership. That is just a truth that it doesn't matter what you're doing, whether you are a CEO of a Fortune 500 company, Fortune 100 company, or you're just leading your family. Everything rises and falls on leadership. And when we take that personal responsibility, what we start to realize is when we're doing goals, I think Michael Hyatt says that goals are not about what you accomplish. They're about who you become. And when we're doing all of this stuff, it's not about the goals that we're accomplishing. It's about the fact that we are becoming better leaders. We're becoming a person on the other side of it, coming through adversity, coming through challenge, coming through all the things that it takes to be able to do a goal and accomplish a goal. And so, looking at you, Mike, and writing it down and having a task, I do time blocking on my calendar just like that, where I say, look, this amount of time I need to be, going to the Y, or I need to, tackle this specific project in order to move it forward. And if I don't do that, if I don't have it on my calendar, it doesn't happen.
Right. And some personality styles are ones that automatically do what I do because that's my style. I need to write it down. Others might be like Robert, where it's a little bit less detailed in his orientation to it, but he still says, hey, if I write it down, I get a plan, I block things out. If your calendar is full of things every single day, and this is again back to a previous episode, we talked about margin, but you need to have some margin in your life to be able to get things done that you want to do. If you're required to be in meetings every day, and with Zoom, I heard some recent data, I can't remember what it is, but when you used to have to physically walk from one room in a building to another room in a building to go to a meeting, you could stop by the restroom. Usually there was at least a 5-minute swing of time in between there. Now what research shows, we end a Zoom meeting, we click a button, we're right on the next Zoom meeting. You don't even have time to mentally switch gears about what you're doing and where you're going. And this is another thing that I think is going to be helpful for you in 2024 is building some time in to transition between what you're doing. I meet with a series of my clients back to back to back. But you know what? I have a 10-minute break in between so that I'm able to make the switch and finish up the thoughts from one coaching client to the next one and prepare for what I'm going to have those conversations with them about, finish that up. Because if we don't, we're doing a disservice to our clients, we're doing a disservice to ourselves.
Yep, absolutely. I 100% agree with that. And I think the other part is, if your calendar's so full, it's probably because you think everything's a priority, or you're not prioritizing the right things. And, what I see happen a lot of times with leaders is leaders will take on the next fire and they won't accomplish things that are going on in their list, because they're not accounting for the fact that things can go wrong, things do go wrong, and building that margin in. Like, I'll give an example. I remember getting an email from my CPA to fill out a piece of paper or fill out a form. And in that form, it said, we need these documents in there. And I'm sitting here thinking, this form's going to take about 15 minutes to fill out. I can squeeze it in between this time and this time. Well, the forms that I had to go and get to put in there ended up taking me like an hour to track them down, compile them together, and then import them into the form. And so when a simple task that we think is going to take 15 minutes ends up taking us an hour and a half, it disrupts the whole day. And so learning to build in margin and know the things that may happen, giving yourself enough time to do those is really key with our time.
Yeah.
Prioritizing the right things.
Yeah. Well, and related to that, I think, is also the fact that if you have the priorities listed out, you can do like Robert has suggested. You start something, and you at least get it started, and then being able to document some notes. I had a group I was with this morning, in fact, and we were talking about what happens when a person is not able to show up to work because of an illness. And this is a construction company where they've got to be able to transition. Just because somebody can't show up doesn't mean that they're not going to show up on the job. And so they were talking about systems they needed to put in place so there's clear communication about what's the next most important thing. And what one of the people brought up is I asked him, he told me all about it over the phone, but I told him I need him to text me a list of what those important things are so I can determine which order they need to be done in based upon my skills and abilities. And so thinking sometimes about, it's all about me, it's also about who the people are that we're impacting. And maybe a future podcast we can talk about meetings and those types of things, which is another big piece that Wickman and Hyatt talk about how you have effective meetings. Because one of the most challenging things, I think, for a business is the owner, the leaders believe we need to have a meeting, and the people doing the work go, these meetings are a waste of our time. And so maybe that's a future episode we can have, Robert. But I want to say, as we wrap this up today, that your ability to move the rocks, to accomplish your goals, to whatever the language is that we want to use around getting things done to help your business, help you personally and professionally, is about the need to have a system. So it doesn't matter whether your system is the traction system, whether it's a full focus planner, whether it's a Franklin Covey Planner, or whether it's a list that you follow. Having a system is going to help you as you move forward and help you with the priorities. So if you're feeling like you're carrying a big burden, it's probably because you're trying to remember everything you need to do. And a big release for you would be to just write it down.
Yeah, 100%. And there's nothing worse than being the person who drops the ball on a lot of stuff because you got too much going on and you can't remember it all. And then you get somebody who goes, hey, where are we with this? And you're like, oh, that look of the deer in the headlights just comes up. I totally forgot about that. So write it down, get a process. I love it. Thanks, Mike. Appreciate you. Looking forward to seeing you guys on the next episode. Till then, take care. God bless.
Thank you for joining us. Our hope is this episode has been helpful for you today. If it's impacted you in some way, we encourage you to share it with someone. To receive a direct notification of our next episode, click the follow button on your favorite app or platform. You can also watch each episode on YouTube. The links are in the description. If you want to connect with us on a deeper level, go to countercultureleadership.com/resources. We'll see you next week on the Elevate Podcast.